Alright guys, it's Hugh here back with another video, and in this video I want to share with you my thoughts on why I might be switching from using Canon mirrorless type cameras to going with the red Komodo X, because this is the first red that I've really kind of feel like I'm getting close to getting my hands on. I'll go into it in more detail later in the video, but for now I'm just going to actually share with you what I think are the advantages of going down with the red, not going down with the red, going with the red Komodo X, and you know, the DSMC3 ecosystem and all that, and the accessories, and why I think that's very appealing for me, and why I think it's going to be sort of more advantageous than shooting with cameras like this, the R5, and my new main camera, which I actually really like, which is the R5C. So when the Komodo came out first, for some bizarre reason, I wasn't that attracted to it. And I think the main reason was the fact that it was a crop sensor, because I had got myself into full frame cameras, both the R5, the Panasonic S1. I had the EOS R before that. So I was kind of used to shooting on full frame. And when you have full frame cameras and full frame glass, you know, going back to a crop sensor camera, even though it's red, and even though film cameras are, you know, S35 crop in comparison to full frame, it kind of seemed like a little bit of a step back. Plus, the camera was, when it was released, it was sort of released with the whole crash camera sort of association with it. I think it was Michael Bay that sort of inspired that camera, or asked Red indeed to make that camera. I'm not too sure, was it Michael Bay or James Cameron? So it kind of came across as a compromised camera. In other words, it's a really cool camera, but you're going to struggle with audio. You're going to struggle with this. You're going to have to rig it up to make it work and all that. So yeah, I didn't go down the route with the Komodo. Then last year, the Red Raptor came out, and I was just obsessed with getting that camera. I shared my thoughts on that in the last video I did about the R5C. I said to myself, you know what, if I can get a loan for this camera and pay off maybe 600 to 700 euros a month, but get bookings with it, it's going to be worth it. But I just felt that it was a little bit, you know, too much camera for me at the time. So a few weeks ago, along comes the Komodo X, vastly improved over the Komodo 6K, the first one. So some of the things that I really like and that are really kind of drawing me towards the Komodo X is as follows. And the big one is the actual image. It could be the dynamic range. It could be just the red, you know, the red color, the codec, the raw, whatever. But there's a fullness to the red image that you just cannot describe. And I don't have that much experience in red footage, but I do know that there's just something about the image that's just extra special. And I was watching a podcast recently, a video by Carlos Quintero. I've watched a lot of his stuff. He's a very deep guy, knows a lot about red cameras and indeed other cameras. He loves the R5C, but he spoke about that. He spoke about that sort of fullness to the image. When you just look at it, there's a certain depth to it. And I knew exactly what he was on about when he said that, because I remember years ago shooting on Blackmagic cameras. I had two Blackmagic cameras on the go. One of them actually had a global shutter. It was a production camera. And I thought the image was quite nice out of them. And then I sold them and I got a GH5, and I was shooting with a Canon 90D as well at the time, or sorry, 80D. But I remember going from the Blackmagics to the GH5 and being happy with the camera. I thought it was very, very easy to use. It was just so much friendlier to use than the Blackmagics. But I noticed that there was just a sort of something lacking in the image. I was trying to figure out what it was. I was looking at the detail. I said, right, it's really detailed. You know, I'm getting depth of field because I'm using the Sigma 18 to 35 on a speed booster. But there's something missing. And I just felt like that the image was a bit thin. It was like as if it was an image of an image or something. I just could not describe it. When people talk about that sort of depth to the image and the fullness of the rendering of what the sensor sees in real life, that is the big one for me. That's one of the main things that attracts me to that. The second one is another big one, is the sort of, I guess, the fact that you're just shooting on a red. Is it good for business? Will my clients know the difference? I think some of them might. I think some of them will know what a red camera is. I've said it to a few clients that I'm thinking of getting a red, and they were like, oh wow, you know, Hollywood, all this kind of stuff. There's a sort of a prestige There's a kind of an aura, or whatever it is, whatever word you want to use to describe it as shooting on a red. I've always wanted to aspire to it since I've heard about red at the very start when, 2007, I think the Red 1 was coming out, and I was going, oh my God. So yeah, it's just hard to believe that in this day and age that we can shoot on these cameras. It's just, the mind boggles. And you don't even need a red. You can shoot on a Canon R5C. It's Netflix approved a camera. I'm pointing at my TV. Here, it's just over there. So that's a big one, to shoot on red. You finally arrived. Will the image be that much better than the RAW out of the Canon R5C? I don't know. But it's just, for me, I guess it's that, yeah, every filmmaker wants a red, because you have to remember that when you're buying a piece of gear like this, it's for your business. I'm a business person at the end of the day. I've done 8 hours of editing in my office today on 3 different client jobs that I'm working on, and those 3 jobs are actually worth about the price of a red Komodo X. So I was editing. I've days and days of production booked in. I've a solid 2 or 3 weeks of computer work editing for my projects. I'm full time as a filmmaker, a videographer. I call myself more so. I was in business years ago, and when I was in business, if we bought something for the business, it was fabrication business. If I bought a new CNC router, cost 30, 40 grand. If we bought a new saw, if we bought different gadgets, even drills, tools, you were kind of buying them for the business. You never felt like it was yours. You never felt like it was, that you got this new toy for you. But when you're a filmmaker and a videographer like me, you don't say, oh, I'm buying a new lens for the business. You say to yourself, I want to try this lens out. I just want to see what kind of image I can capture with it. And it's the same with the cameras. We're kind of into it. We're sort of into the whole thing. It's a crossover between what, our hobby is and what our vocation is and our careers are. So in that way, we're kind of lucky. So what I'm saying is you're buying it because you just love it. You know what I mean? And you're not just buying it for your business. And I recently was watching another podcast style video with Josh Satin, who's a great guy, does a lot of cool videos on mirrorless type cameras. And a guy called Brandon, who has a brilliant YouTube channel called Caffeinated Cameras. And he's just a super cool red shooter. The guy's got great talent. He's a brilliant YouTuber. He was just saying how he's got a C70. He's also got a R5C or whatever. But he said the C70 is just an awesome camera and that he loves it. But he got himself a red Komodo X. And he said, when the C70 is in the bag, it's in the bag. I look at it, I use it for, work jobs, whatever, but I don't feel like taking it out and going shooting with it. But with the red Komodo X, I feel like just taking it out of the bag, going down to the skate park, going down to the skate park and just shooting some really cool content. So that's a big thing. And yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons, just having that power in your hands to shoot just amazing images. That's a big one for me. I love the red ecosystem. I'm not that familiar with it. As I said, I'm not an expert on red stuff, but the DSMC3 ecosystem, the connectivity, the parts, the accessories, I know they're not cheap, but there's just something really, really drawing me towards the way that the cameras or the reds are rigged. I just love it. And I hate the way I have to rig up the R5C. In fact, I've actually got a box full of, I've got like 300 or 400 euros worth of small rig stuff that I just stripped off the rig. I've got it really stripped down. If you saw my rig now, you would just smile because it's so minimal. I don't like rigging these type of cameras. I really don't like connecting up the small micro HDMI connection and the USB-C as well as the way I use the battery. So with the red, you're just slipping on a little V-mount right on the back of the camera. Just click, there it is. It's going to power up the camera. That's going to connect through. If you get the proper monitor there, you're only going to have one connection. You've got a touchscreen monitor there connected up with minimal cables. The LEMO connectivity as well there. The fact that the red Komodo X now has better audio than the Komodo, it's got you can just bang on some XLR cables connectivity there to it, 2 inputs or whatever. Yeah, it's not overly complex audio camera. It doesn't have that many options, but you can get good quality straight into the camera. So yeah, and that's not even the biggest thing for me. I'll probably still end up using my little zoom. I've just picked this up actually recently, and I think it's great. It's fabulous, and I'm using a different type of mic here because this room is very spacey. It's actually my same mic, but I'm going right up to it, and that's the beauty of 32-bit floating point. I can actually just not worry about exploding and distorting my sound. Anyway, yeah. So the biggest reason, or one of the reasons, it's probably actually the biggest issue with the R5C for me is the dynamic range. The camera just loses it. It's a really good camera and I love it. But if you're shooting anything where somebody's near a window, it's just like bye-bye outdoors, outside. You can get around it. I mean, I've shot stuff where I've blasted light on the subject inside, and it's kind of made me get a stop or two outside. But the red, it's got great dynamic range, so it's going to be a huge improvement, and that's just something that's amazing to have. If you have a camera that has good dynamic range, it's just beautiful. So that is the big downside of the R5C. Now I'm going to talk a little bit in a little while about the R5C versus the red Komodo X, and maybe the R5C2, because I believe that camera is going to be coming out. Another thing is with the red Komodo X is the RF mount. Now this is, I think, it's the third or fourth red that has an RF mount built into it, a lockable one at this with the Komodo X. Sounds really good. I've got RF glass, and there's something about just mounting a lens straight on a camera that when you're not using an adapter, that's just really cool. It's just nice. When I moved to the R5 from the ESR with the Sigma 24-70, and I just use this native lens without using the EF to RF adapter, the camera just balanced so nice in my hand. And I just love that about the red Komodo X. It's a big thing for me because I've about 5 or 6 of the RF lenses now, and just straight on, boom, there you go. Jared Land, what a cool dude. The red family, the community of red people, red shooters. Yeah, just saw him jumping on a podcast there a few weeks back with Carlos Quintero. Just how cool was that? Just the co-owner, CEO of Red just coming on your podcast. Maybe 200 people watching live. I don't know, not that many, but they seem to be very loyal to their users. And I actually sent Red a message a few days ago, just wondering, was there any availability for any sort of discount? It's worth it to ask. The quick answer was no, but one of their guys got back and he was very supportive of me. He said he wants to see what I'm going to do with the camera and to send him an email, sent me his personal email address. He said, look, send me on the work you're doing with it. I'd love to see it, and it seemed very genuine. And it was a long-winded reply. And when you get somebody coming back to you within a couple of hours and going into detail in an email, it kind of shows that they have a good ethic, work ethic towards their users, The rigging, the 60 frames per second, the fact that this camera the red Komodo X could be good for wildlife, that's another advantage to me. The global shutter, that's a big one. I'll talk about the wildlife thing soon because that's just a thing that I'm really interested in getting into more of. I'm doing a little bit of wildlife work. I don't really share it on here, but I'll talk about it soon. But the global shutter, I used to shoot on the Blackmagic cameras, the BMCC and the BMPC 4K. And I believe I was one of the first guys in Ireland to be shooting on those cameras. And I used to get some strange looks, particularly when I was out and I had the two cameras together. I used to rig the BMPC 4K production camera, but I didn't rig the BMCC. Yeah, it was really funny because I often shot side by side and I like using sort of long lenses, zoom type lenses, tele lenses and stuff. And sometimes I'd swap over different cameras to get a bit of extra reach. And I would notice that with the global shutter on the production camera, man, like the movement was great, just no jello whatsoever. And then when you go over to the BMCC camera, Blackmagic cinema camera, EF mount was the one I had, any movement, if you hit off the camera, it was like, woo. You bump off the camera and you have to wait a couple of seconds until it actually steadies itself before you press record. It was just so bad. The jello was unreal. So shooting on a global shutter camera, it could possibly open up opportunities to you. It can be nice for just action. And it's nice to just have that option, global shutter, especially if you're shooting in sort of action stuff, wildlife stuff, birds flying, might be better for it than rolling shutter cameras. If you were to shoot stuff on a car, now the lens might get complicated because lenses have stabilization options and there's movement within the lenses. But if you did shoot on a car, you know, you locked up your camera, you might have a bit of vibration, but if you shoot with a fast shutter speed, you could maybe stabilize it in post. It might give you extra kind of flexibility there. I don't know. That's sort of a little bit of a nitpicky type of thing. But yeah, just before I go to the negatives, some of the ecosystem, the touchscreen monitor, the connectivity, the little DSMC3 interface on the top of the camera that you connect up. You've got a touchscreen monitor there with no batteries on the monitor. You're getting your power from the V-mount at the back, micro V-mount. Very nice. I love the accessories. I'm looking at stuff that Bright Tangerine make for it. Even the small rig stuff, small rig are quite affordably priced. Apart from their batteries, so their batteries are a little bit expensive. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can rig these Red cameras out with. And as I said, I just like that idea. So some of the disadvantages then of the Red Komodo X coming from these kind of cameras, other than the straight up inconvenience, which is kind of obvious, it is much easier to shoot on these cameras, particularly when they've stabilization and stuff. But the crop factor, when you get full frame glass and you cannot use it to its fullness, it's a bit of a sickener. Now, look, a 15 to 35, what is it going to be like a 20, 25? Actually, the crop on the full width of the Komodo X, I don't think it's a 1.5 if you're going 2-to-1 ratio. I think it's 1.33. If you're going at a UHD, sort of a ultra HD ratio, which is 3840 by 2160, it's a more boxy crop. I'd say it's about 1.5 or whatever. But you're not using the fullness of the glass. So you're switching from a 24 to 70 to like a 36 to 105 or something. You know, it's kind of something like that, or more, 40 to 105. Yeah, it's a bit of a bummer not being able to use the fullness. But, you know, if you have a full frame camera in your bag, which I intend on doing, the R5C, yeah, you can still get, options. I ain't overly familiar with some of the other disadvantages, like the startup time and the black point setting, black balance. Is it? What's it called again? You know, where you leave the lens cap on, you do setting. I don't think you need to do it, but there's certain things that apparently slow you down. I know it was pretty bad with the Komodo. Not sure if it's much worse or any better with the Komodo X. I think it is. Does that matter? Yeah, for kind of quick stuff, maybe not the best camera. So that's a kind of a disadvantage. And then, of course, the price. Like, the Red Komodo X on its own is 10 grand. I'm just going to say 10 grand because conversion rate, euros are more valuable than dollars, but then you guys get things a bit cheaper over in the States. So I'm just going to say the number, okay, for price. But yeah, about 10 grand, but it's plus VAT. Now I can claim tax VAT on it. So it's about 10 grand for just the camera. And realistically then, if you want to get it to perform properly, and if you want to get into the Red sort of DSMC3 ecosystem and get that small HD monitor, that small HD make for Red, you want to get 2 batteries at least, possibly 3. You're up on 15 grand. There's another 5 grand there, which is the price of an R5C on its own and a lens. It's expensive. It seems cheap, but then you go, okay, I need another, 5 grand here. It seems cheap for a Red and for what it can do. But you see, this is the thing. If you're a working filmmaker, videographer, and you're getting bookings, you're going to justify it. I mean, if you finance it, if you get a business loan, or if you pay it out of your savings, whatever way you do it, if you have work for it, it's going to pay for itself, So with my work in regards to that, I edit all my own content. So there's weeks that go by where I'm not actually shooting anything, but every month I probably do about 8 shoots. There's probably 8 days where I'm shooting out of a month. That's kind of out of 20 days. So yeah, I mean, if you were getting, if you could add a little bit of cash to your booking fee if you're shooting on red. Absolutely. Or you could give people the option, give them a sense of value. Say that I'm, X amount of money, but I'll shoot it on a red for an extra 200. And you're going to want to shoot it on the red anyway if you didn't get any more money. Let's face it, if you've got the camera, you're going to want to use it. So I just want to talk about wildlife in regards to the red Komodo X camera. Now, last year when the Raptor came out, the frame rates were just, off the scale, incredible. Full frame camera that crops in. A lot of people were seeing the crop, the 5K crop on the Raptor at, is it 240 frames per second or 300? But a lot of people were probably saying, oh, crop, it's a pity it crops, so much. But a lot of the wildlife guys would be going, you know what, that's what I want. With wildlife, you end up cropping in a lot anyway. So with the Raptor, that was just the ultimate wildlife camera, video camera, and indeed sports camera. Anything like that where there's high action or a high level of movement, high frame rate options are amazing. So the Komodo X has been a big improvement over the Komodo there. The 80 frames per second in RAW 6K, then 96 in 5K and 120 in 4K. That 120 in 4K cropped in, really nice for wildlife videography. You've got a lot of slow motion there. 120 frames per second is quite good. You will find yourself, if you're shooting in high frame rates, it depends on what you're shooting. Very often 60 is enough. You don't really want to slow it down that much. If there's a really huge moment of action like an osprey or a white-tailed eagle or a American bald eagle if you're in the States, catching a fish, it's brilliant to have it slowed down as much as possible. The lion taking down the wildebeest, of course, as many frame rates as possible. But any sort of birds or wildlife, just in day-to-day activity, if they're perched looking around, you don't need to slow it down that much. So I think the Komodo X has sort of ample frame rates there for most wildlife stuff. And as I said, if you have, if you're going in cropping into 4K on the Komodo on an already cropped sensor, you're cropping down quite a lot. But if you had a lens like, shall we say, a 300mm f2.8 lens, even like a lens like the Sigma 120-300, which is an affordable enough zoom lens, it's a great lens, very versatile. So if you had a lens like that that'll shoot at 300 2.8 and you crop that down to 4K at 120 frames per second, then it's going to be like, this lens. It's going to be like a 500 on a full frame. So if you put a 500mm f4 on, your Komodo, you're going to get like a lot of reach. You're going to get 4K is going to look like an 800 f 5.6 or thereabouts or 6.3. So it's going to look really nice. And it's going to give you 120 frames per second in RAW 4K. That is a lot more than what the Canons will give you. The red Komodo X is nowhere near as convenient to use for wildlife as like the mirrorless style cameras, the Sonys, the A1s, the R5C even. You're into a different world with the Komodo X. It's a different type of wildlife filmmaking. Don't expect to be, walking the lands with your camera and your tripod. Oh, there's a bird. I'm going to get it. That ain't going to happen that easily, whereas you can do it with these guys. And I can even handhold the R5 with the 800 RF lens and get autofocused, relatively still footage, stabilized footage. So you're never going to get that stuff with the Komodo. It's more where you're actually doing dedicated wildlife filming, building a hide, getting there in the morning before the birds or whatever arrives, putting in the work, and then you get the shots. That's how it works. But don't expect, run and gun or gun and run, whichever way it is, type of wildlife filmmaking. Yeah. So that's my take on the wildlife stuff. So let's talk about owning both Canon and, the likes of the Komodo X. As I said, maybe I'll get rid of one of these guys. The R5, I'm finding myself not using it and I can get good money for this. So if it's sitting in the bag, I've just seen it sitting in the bag recently and I'm kind of saying to myself, because I'm doing everything on the R5, I said, you know what, I should probably sell it and put that money towards the Komodo. So that's kind of one of the reasons I'll be without a spare photography camera. That could be dangerous. Mightn't be that wise. I'm not too sure yet what I'm going to do. Canon are more than likely bringing out an R5C Mark II. I didn't think they would. I thought this R5C Mark II was a kind of fly-by-night camera. Turns out that they sold much better than they thought. If Canon bring out the R5C Mark II, and even the R5C as it is, I think it's going to go beautifully with the red Komodo. I think you'll match them up just fine. I've matched my Canons to my Panasonic S1 just fine with interview stuff. I don't think it's ever really a problem for me. If you get kind of comfortable in DaVinci Resolve, you're going to be close enough. With the Komodo, I think you're going to match it even closer than the Panasonics and Sonys. I think color science with Canon and red, I think they're sort of in line a little bit. So yeah, having an R5C and having a red Komodo in your bag, Komodo X, is a nice combination. Really is a nice combination. If Canon bring out they are bringing out the R5 Mark II, I think that's going to be really cool. Yeah, I mean, that will be a nice setup, an R5 Mark II, an R5C Mark II, and a red Komodo X. So let's hope that Canon sort of improve the R5C Mark II, and let's see what they come up with. It'll be interesting because what could happen is you might actually even get red Komodo X owners wanting an R5C Mark II. A second version of a camera is always a good idea. And, you know, the first version, the R5C, yeah, there's been a lot of issues, let's be honest, but it's still an amazing camera. Photography, yeah, I mean, you cannot shoot photography on an R5, on a red Komodo X, of course. Yeah, I mean, you can do time lapses and all that, but I think a lot of us guys and girls in the filmmaking community now, we're kind of doubling up as photographers, and I'm offering the service to my clients. I shot the other day, I shot some interview stuff for clients, I shot some B-roll, and then I shot some LinkedIn profile pictures for the staff, and I also did some group shots for their social media. You know, so there was like, I was on site for about 5 hours working, maybe 6. I did 3 hours of video, 2 hours of photography, and an hour of just eating food. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the photography. I don't want to give it up. So I need to have a photography presence in my life. At the moment, the R5 is just, I just do not need anything better than the R5. It's just amazing. The R5C for photography, it's an R5. Simple as that. Does the battery last as long? I don't know. I've not noticed it that bad. So the media then, the Red Code RAW. Red Code RAW, I don't know that much about it, but the compressed RAW options of Red, from what I hear, are far superior than what you'll get in the likes of the Canons. With the dynamic range and all that, and my color grading, I'm really I feel like I've improved with color grading recently. So that's another thing I'm really kind of liking about the Reds and getting into that, because the Canon RAW, as nice as it is to have it, you just don't find yourself using it that much. It is a brilliant option if you want to shoot some really high-end stuff and get the best out of the camera, but the file sizes are just a bit off-putting. The workflow, I think Red will be easier. So there you go. That's a bit on that there. The ProRes thing, yeah, look, I used to shoot in ProRes on the Blackmagics all the time. Everything was ProRes. There was no other option. I shot on the Ninja V with ProRes, and now on the Canon R5s, I'm not really shooting ProRes. I think the new Mac Studio is doing a good job of handling the codec straight out of the R5C, so I'm not really shooting on the Ninja anymore. 4K as well, ProRes is the max. I don't think it shoots 6K ProRes, does it? I don't think so. So that's a pity, but does it matter? Perhaps it does, but the option to shoot sampled down, I'm assuming it's sampled down 4K, 6K to 4K ProRes. So yeah, and that is a little thing as well about the Canons. They sample from 8K down to 4K, so that's why they get lovely 4K out of the Canons. So maybe 4K out of the R5C is nicer than 4K ProRes out of the Red Komodo X. So low light, I don't know with the Red cameras how the low light works and the ISO thing works. I know it's a bit weird to get your head around it at first, coming from a dual native ISO type of camera like the R5 and the R5C. I don't know what that's going to be like. The R5C, I recently shot a job and I just switched from 800 to 3200 ISO, and it was great. I just had so much more light. It was fantastic to work with. So yeah, low light, I'm sure the red is great. I'm sure the Komodo X is going to be fine. I'm not really a low light shooter. Another thing I want to just mention is the art of filmmaking and how us videographers, YouTubers, filmmakers, cinematographers, I don't call myself that, by the way, we kind of get caught up in content, and we're kind of caught up in social media now. And, I'm a bit caught up in work projects and the likes. And I've kind of taken my foot off the gas in terms of actually producing short films. I think that if I do end up going down the route of filming on a red, getting this Komodo X camera, I honestly think that I'm really going to have to push myself to shoot more movie stuff, more filmmaking content, and just get myself out of my comfort zone. Get away from this little setup, sitting down doing a YouTube video. I want to just force myself to make more stuff, because my entry into filmmaking was shooting a little short movie that I shot on a Canon 60D. I barely knew what I was doing. I barely knew what a 50mm lens was, but somehow that movie just kind of worked, and it got 4 million views over a few years, and it's still chugging away on YouTube. So I'm saying to myself, right, if I did that a couple of years, like 10 years ago, with very little work put in, what if I put my mind to it? What'll I come up with? So I want to go down that route a bit more again. And when you think about the work that us YouTubers put into content, like creating reviews that mightn't get that many views for products that we mightn't have that much interest in, that people might not be looking for as well. So even though I haven't an overly populated YouTube channel, there's been hours and hours and days and days and days of time put into reviews that I kind of didn't enjoy and that haven't done well. And I'm looking at it now saying, if I'm going forward here, I really have to make things worthwhile for me. So filmmaking has to come back into it, the art of cinematography. Even if I start simple and just do stuff here with, some actors I know or whatever, I just have to start again. So I think owning a red, just the excitement of a new ecosystem and all that goes with it, I think that will be kind of the little bit of inspiration or the little kick up the arse that I need to get me back into kind of filmmaking. Because, I am getting any younger, by the way. And, I feel like sometimes that I'm not pushing myself in the direction of my dreams. So that's it, wrapped up in a nutshell, pretty much what I think of the red Komodo X. It's a highly appealing camera for me. I'm looking forward to perhaps getting it. I'm not fully sure. I'm about, I think, 65% getting it, 35% not getting it. It's been a long decision in the making, and let's see what happens in the next few weeks. And if I do get it, I'm looking forward to creating content about that camera. I'm definitely gonna make some stuff, videos. There'll be an unboxing for sure. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you thought this video was okay. Very simple stuff here. No B-roll this time. Hope you actually got something out of it. If you're as excited about this camera as I am, then maybe you listened in, because I found myself watching absolutely every single little bit of YouTube content on this camera, as indeed I did on the Red Raptor last year. And I'm still watching content on the Raptor on YouTube. So yeah, picking apart videos, rewatching them, and just loving it. Loving the whole, industry that we're in, and I'm just excited about it. So that's it for me, guys. Until the next video, do chime in with a comment, give me a thumbs up as well, and if you haven't subbed, shame on you. It's time to subscribe to the channel. Please do. Okay, it would be great to have you. So bye for now, take care, and I'll see you.